Welcome back to Iowa,
Thank
sir.
you, and it's great to be back on the Iowa Talk Leaders show.
Well, thank you so much, sir.
No, it is. It's
You're going to
great.
say the same thing to my buddy up in Sioux City later this afternoon.
Well, Sam?
You'll say the same thing to Clovis that you just said to me.
Should
I know how you...
Should I?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I've never met Sam, so say hi to him for me.
I've only met Sam once, and I'll be on his show. Actually, you're right. Later today, I'm on my way up to Sioux City today.
Okay. Well, the fact that you keep coming back to these things means that
I just like you, Jan.
You like the weather.
I like you, Jan. It's great to be with you.
I fully appreciate that.
I always feel like I get, I walk out of here somewhat exhausted, feeling like I've just gone through a fencing match, and dodging the thrusts and parrying.
I just keep asking you basic stuff,
no,
like
you
what's
don't.
in the Constitution.
No,
and will you actually obey it this time?
Your listeners don't listen to you because you ask the basic stuff, Jan. Let me just assure you, you're good. You're very good.
Well, thank you so much. Let me just since our time is limited.
Yeah.
I can only torture you for a half an hour.
Please take calls. So the callers, please call. If you do me a favor, help me. Please call. Ask questions.
This is not a telethon, Senator.
So he feels an obligation to take your call. So I don't have
whining for calls is beneath you, sir. I want you to put you on your earphones here for a second because I want you to hear something that Newt said yesterday. And this is foreign policy, so we're going to get serious right away. And he was on with Greta, I think, last night, and he said about Libya and what the United States' role should be.
Sure.
I want my listeners to catch up with us. All right, now we got to get serious. I like harassing Senator Santorum, but
calls are coming. Watch, the calls are coming.
This is too important.
Please keep calling.
All right, so here's what he said.
The United States doesn't need anybody's permission. We don't need to have NATO. Who frankly won't bring much to the fight. We don't need to have the United Nations. All we have to say is that we think that slaughtering your own citizens is unacceptable and that we're intervening, and we don't have to send troops. All we have to do is suppress his Air Force, which we could do in minutes, and then we have to say that publicly that he is gone, that the military should switch sides now, and we should help the rebels. And if that means getting them weapons or whatever it means, the fact that there's no more Libyan air power and the fact that the United States has publicly come out for decisively replacing him, I suspect the military will dump him.
That's a long soundbite, and there's a lot of information in that. But there's just an amazing expansion of the U.S. role abroad and unilateral. I say we don't need anybody's permission. I sort of like that part of it.
Right.
If it's in the United States' interest, why do we have to ask anybody? But assess the overall notion. What should our role be? Gaddafi has been a thorn in our side since the late 60s. He was part of the Lockerbie issue. Americans were murdered by his acts of terrorism. He's supplied terrorists all over the world. Ronald Reagan put him back in the box for a little while when he
Ronald Reagan bombed Libya.
Yes, and tried to take him out.
Right. So I mean, this is, if you want to be Reagan-esque here, it seems like the path is clear. Look, I think Newt has it mostly right. I would say that you're going to be on one side or the other on this, and we got on the wrong side in Iran when we decided to do nothing. And I always remind people that the last piece of legislation I successfully drafted and passed was back in 2006, and it was the Iran Freedom Support Act, which the biggest chunk of that was two big chunks. One was to pass sanctions on Iran and their nuclear program. The second was to fund the pro-democracy movement there and to try to create covert and overt ties to folks that could overturn the regime there, which I think is dangerous to the security of the Middle East and the world. So we got on the wrong side of Iran, and in the case of Libya, same situation, brutal dictator, enemy of the United States. We're either going to be on the side of him or we're going to be on the side of the folks who are trying to overturn him. And in this case, it could be these folks could be problematic. I'm not saying we're going to see a pro-Western democracy come out of this groups in the streets. Maybe we will, maybe we won't, but it's going to be no worse than what we have right now, and a chance of, if we're on the right side and we're seen as an ally of these folks, that we can do better. So I think Newt has it basically right, except I'm not as cavalier on saying, well, we don't need anybody's approval and minimizing and sort of throwing NATO over the bus. I mean that sounds good. It sounds like we should be able to do whatever we want, and we should. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't work with folks and try to bring them along and bring them on board to the extent that we can get people to be helpful to us and to support the mission. I think the better chance of success and the better chance of a more stable regime being built in afterwards. But I am for being on the side of the rebels. I think it's a very limited strike. It takes out the capability for them to conduct air raids against the rebels who in Libya, and I think the cost as well as the intrusion is pretty minimal for a very substantial, I think, benefit for the long run.
One of the reasons why we have an interest in the Middle East at all is because of energy, because of oil.
Yep. Certainly, Libya has a lot of oil, and you're seeing the result of the instability in the price of oil right now. You're seeing, I was listening this morning, like $4.25 a gallon in San Francisco.
I'm kind of happy to hear that.
Well, I mean, these are the people who won high prices, so really they should be happy out there.
And I'm really happy that they have to use that high price oil to go up and down hills.
That's right. You don't have to worry about that here in Central Iowa, right?
Yes, exactly. We get really good gas mileage here. But anyway, the oil stuff, our dependence on that has not changed. In fact, it's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse.
We keep talking about energy policies. This president has actually dragged his heels upon opening up.
The key thing about the energy policy is it is a huge win for us economically, and it's a huge win for us from the standpoint of foreign policy and our security.
Tell me what your policy is.
The policy is to produce as much energy as humanly possible here in America. And I am for, people have criticized me, I was just in New York, people have criticized me saying, oh, how can you be for these subsidies? Well, because I want more of it created. And my feeling is, are there subsidies for drilling oil wells in Pennsylvania? Yes, there are. There's a tax credit. And I've talked to many oil and gas folks in Pennsylvania, and they've told me that a lot of these are small producing wells. A lot of these folks said, we wouldn't be drilling if we didn't have this credit. But because we do, we can take this risk and we can move forward. And I know there's a lot of folks out here in Iowa that are growing corn and producing ethanol. And if there wasn't some support for doing that, if there wasn't a mandate for the amount of ethanol to be used, there wouldn't be $6, $7 corn. We'd still be at $2.50 a bushel here, and we'd be paying countercyclical payments to farmers instead of helping create a market for corn. To create energy. And so my feeling is I did not and have not in the past supported the blender's credit. I'm not too sure that's the best place to weigh into the equation, and that's the most efficient way to do it. I think from a national security point of view, what we need to have is we need to have fleets of vehicles in America that can run on things other than oil, because we may be in a situation as we become more and more dependent upon foreign oil where if there's an embargo, if there's a shutdown of the Suez Canal, if there's a larger conflagration in the Middle East, we better have vehicles in this country that can run on things other than gasoline.
Are you talking about combinations of hybrid and flex fuel?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. We need to have fleets of flex fuel vehicles. I know there's some out there, but I think if we're gonna put any resource in supporting the ethanol industry, I think it's in helping consumers purchase flex fuel vehicle cars. If that's an incentive we need to do, or I think that's a better place to do it. Again, from a national security point of view, we shouldn't be in a position where we're held hostage to oil and gas interests in the Middle East.
What do you think of what Romer said yesterday? He got in the face of of Iowa and said, no more subsidies for ethanol, no more subsidies for oil. And it's kind of a gutsy thing to say.
Well, look. Jan, when I was in the Congress, I was against pretty much all subsidies in agriculture. But to me, this isn't an agriculture subsidy. This is a national security investment. This is an investment in making sure that we have all of the fuels. I'm a big nuclear power guy. I'm not a big wind power or hydro because I just don't think the capability is there to really replace base load of any real way.
Okay, here's the point, Senator, because you're talking music to the ears of people who live here in Iowa. We understand ethanol and the role it
I gave
plays.
this same speech to a guy in New York yesterday morning on a talk show. I mean, I give this speech everywhere because this is a national security issue. It's not a regional issue.
Here's the deal. Everybody's not paying attention exactly to what you're saying, and this is going to be on a podcast.
Good.
And where we also have this where we'll be videoing this, so this will be vcast all over the world too. So it's easy to convince us here in Iowa about this because we understand it. Now, look in the camera and tell the rest of the world why this is not just an Iowa message and it's a world message or a USA message.
Well, you know, it's funny because I was on this New York station. I was talking to a group of folks this morning, and I was saying, you know, there's a cynicism around the world led in recently by Al Gore, who said, you know, the only reason I was for ethanol is because I wanted to win the Iowa caucuses. And in my feeling is, well, Al Gore, you know, how do you know when Al Gore's lying? Well, his lips are moving. And so if from my perspective, if he was willing to lie about why he was for ethanol for 30 years, then why do you believe him now when he's saying, you know, why he was for it, why he wasn't, or why he shouldn't be for it in the future? The bottom line is Al Gore doesn't want cheap energy. Al Gore doesn't believe in an America that should be growing, both from the standpoint of economically and from the standpoint of people. I believe that America needs to be growing, needs to be bigger, needs to be more robust, and that means we need more energy. If America is going to continue the great moral enterprise, that means we need to be not just an expanding economy, we need to be an expanding people. Remember, America has the second lowest density population of any Western culture, any Western country. There's plenty of room for more people. There's plenty of room for more growth and more dynamism. We want America to be that ever-growing, ever-shining city on the hill. And to do that, we need energy. And we need energy produced here, and ethanol and corn-based, whether it's corn-based or whether it's sugar-based or whether it's cellulosic, whatever it is, we need to create more energy here. It's good for our economy. It's good for rural America. And I think that, you know, look, one of the things that I'm most passionate about, I come from Pennsylvania. We have the second largest rural population in the country. And the places that were always hurting the most in my state were always the rural areas. You know, the economy's changed. The economy's changed, and it's moved the wealth and population into the cities. I think it's important to have a vital and vibrant rural population and rural economy, and mining and drilling and agriculture are the keys to that, are the keys to keeping people out on the land. And for us as a society, I think that element of society is still important. And you know, helping those economies. We help the economies of the cities a lot, and we need to help the economies of rural areas too. And that's in the best interest of our society also.